It's time to take a look at the next assault battlecruiser. This is the Naga 3. Now the Naga 3 is using railguns, while the previous two battlecruisers that I was flying were using lasers and projectile turrets. That shouldn't affect the performance much. After all, railguns are really good and the ship should perform really well. But first, let's take a look at the ship info. Roll bonus, minus 95% large railgun power grid requirement, minus 50% large railgun capacity need. Advanced large railgun operation bonus will give you plus 6% large railgun damage, plus 5% large railgun optimal range. Advanced battlecruiser command bonus will give you plus 5% flight velocity and minus 4% signature radius for the micro warp drive. The Naga has 2 drones, 7 high slots, 3 medium slots, 6 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs, 37,000 overall defense. This ship is primarily a shield tank. Don't armor tank a Naga, it's not going to work really well. 3154 gigajoule is the capacitor, 476 seconds is the recharge time, 16.73 gigajoule per second is the recharge rate. It can knock 7 targets. Surprisingly, the ship isn't as slow as the stats might suggest. It's actually a fairly fast little battlecruiser. Now I have 1657.03 DPS with the C-type large rifled railguns, and they have about 100 km optimal range, accuracy value of 41.06 and tracking speed 2.75. Overall, not bad, pretty solid. 1 scrambler, 1 web, 1 target painter, dual drones, a large micro warp drive, damage control, capacitor battery, 1 magnetic field stabilizer and dual tracking computers. This is the default sniping build. Now here I have dual burst aerators and I have 1 suspicious tier 4 rig that I'll replace. Should be a tier 3 rig, not sure how a tier 4 rig snuck in. Alright, so dual burst aerators and 1 armbit extension, dual polycarbon engine housings and 1 power grid rig for the engineering rigs, and now I have 100. The range is about the same, it did not change much. Now as for the nanocore, I use this nanocore for aesthetic purpose only. The nanocore is the illusionary ghost core. Although not currently available on purchase, the only reason why I have this nanocore installed is because it makes the ship look nice. I love the effects. But there are other nanocores with much better stats, and you have a lot of nanocores to choose from for this ship. Now, you can make the Naga 3 a tank, active tank, sniper, or a brawling ship, and I believe there is a nanocore for every possible build, so you can even go with the blue nanocore. Again, you have a lot of nanocores to choose from, although I recommend to go for the green, blue, or for the Concord nanocore because they are usually cheap and very easy to obtain. Alright, now for the implants. Since this ship is using railguns, you have 2 options: high power coil and thermal circulation. Now the thermal circulation is more for a armor tank, so the high power coil is the way to go. The general units are going to be focused on speed and range, basically micro warp drive or afterburner unit, and the tracking correction unit for the tracking computers. Now I should have about 150 km range, and that is pretty solid sniping distance. You can also add basically any other unit that you might need depending on the build that your ship is running. The units that I use will mostly be balanced to work with the build that I show you here. And let's undock to show you the range and maximum possible DPS that I can get with this build. Now let me quickly adjust the modules because the game doesn't do that for some reason. Okay. Now this ship is very popular. I see a lot of sniper assault battlecruisers lately. They are mostly a Tornado, Oracle, or a Naga, while the Talos is, I would say, one of the more rare options. The Talos is more of a brawler, while this is more of a sniper. For kilometers per second with the large micro warp drive, it's actually a very good speed. Definitely faster than the Oracle. The Oracle, I believe, was the slowest so far. And let's take a look at the maximum possible DPS that you can get out of this little boat. And of course, also very important, let's check the maneuverability of this ship. Maneuverability with a large propulsion module is always important. You have to be able to turn. If you're not able to turn, well, you might be flying into a wrong direction, or you might actually stumble upon enemy ships, and if that happens, you would want to turn around. And the maneuverability is fairly okay. The ship does accelerate fairly quickly as well, so it does get the passing rate for maneuverability with 2 polycarbon engine housings and use the large micro warp drive. With a nanocore you can even improve the speed. I believe the Naga is one of the more speedy battlecruisers in the game. I had a lot of encounters with a large propulsion battlecruiser, and they are very difficult to catch once they go full speed. Okay, 2,600 DPS with the implant active, and of course I still have the magnetic field stabilizer, but first let's take a look at the range. 167 km optimal, 66 is the accuracy fall-off, 223 optimal, and 89.33 is the accuracy fall-off with dual tracking computers active. That is a phenomenal range. Not as good as on the Tornado with the sniping plant, but it still does get the job done, and this boat does have excellent sniping potential. After all, the assault battlecruisers are snipers, and their main purpose, one of the main purposes of these ships is to be a sniper, and so far this ship has all the necessary requirements for that purpose. You can do a build like this with dual magnetic field stabilizers and 1 tracking computer, 2,700 DPS, which is really good, and you can do the build with the large blasters. The blasters have shorter range, although much higher DPS, and they're excellent for PvP. Although this ship is more of a sniper, you can also run a brawler close range build, and this is basically the build that I would use for it. Quad magnetic field stabilizers, a damage control, and a medium micro warp drive. One of my favorite builds that I use on all of my other ships, including on battleships. So far they have been working really well. The goal is to land on top of your target, quickly weapons crumble them, and then unload the DPS into their ship. That tactic has a very, very high success rate, but you have to be careful because you have no tank. Only the damage control is there to serve as some form of tank, I guess. Okay, it will be interesting to see what's the maximum possible DPS with a build like this. This ship should be fairly fast with the micro warp drive, by the way, so speed should not be a problem. And for now, it looks to be suitable for a low sec PvP boat, just like the Cinnabal or Tornado or some of the other ships that I use or plan to use. 3081 DPS, 1.4 km per second is the micro warp drive speed, which, you know, is actually pretty solid. You can make that a lot faster if you use different rigs, so there's a lot of potential in speed on this ship. And now let's quickly charge up the implant so that I can show the maximum possible DPS. 4,500 DPS with the implant active with 1 magnetic field stabilizer. The DPS is 5,200. With the second one, 5,876. With the third one, 6,318.69, and with the last one, the DPS is 6,542.01 DPS. Really good DPS for a battlecruiser. And the range is 13.5 kilometers, accuracy fall of 15, which is, I would say, excellent range. Basically warp in, weapons crumble them, and maintain that distance and blow the target up. which, you know, is the tactic that we have been using for the last 1 or 2 years, and that tactic has been working really well. So let me show you a bunch of other PvP builds. You can use a build like this with a large extender. You will sacrifice a little bit of DPS, but you will get a lot more hit points, basically a buffer tank. And this build with dual large extenders, because you have a lot of power grid, you can slap 2 large extenders without a problem, and you have a lot of shield now and a lot of buffer. So that's very nice, and you can even improve the passive extender shield volume with a extender general unit, basically the efficiency optimization. It will give you about 24% extra, 23% extra HP boost per extender, and honestly I really do like that. 97,000 hit points, almost 50,000 shield. This is battleship level of hit points there, and you still have some fantastic DPS, which makes this little ship very lethal now. It will be very hard to kill, and not many ships will live long enough to go through its tank, because you have a lot of DPS as well. So let's take a look at the tank. I'm very impressed by how this ship works now, and I'm still trying to figure out which assault battlecruiser to get for myself. 1.4 thousand, 1.4 kilometers per second. The DPS is almost 3,000 by default, which is, you know, really good. 287,000 hit points when the damage roll is active on 49,000 shield hit points, which is really good. 4.1 thousand DPS with the implant active, with 1 magnetic field stabilizer it's 4,089, and with the second one it's 5,258.74 DPS. That is fantastic DPS. So you combine speed, you combine very good tank, very good buffer tank, and you also have fantastic DPS on this little boat. I am honestly impressed by how the Naga 3 is working so far. You can also increase the resilience even more with a adaptive invisibility field. You will still have good DPS, by the way, about 5,000 DPS. But this build is the one that I like. You can swap the medium micro-observer into an afterburner if necessary, although the micro-observer can be more useful if you are going to approach a target that might be 20-30 kilometers away from you. You can catch them fairly easily. Alright, well, let's take this little boat for a ride and let's see how it will perform. Now, the Apocalypse Striker is basically the best PvE boat in the game. Can be followed by the Oracle 3, and of course we have a bunch of other battleships that have similar DPS. Now, the Naga 3 on paper doesn't have as much DPS as the Oracle, or let's say it doesn't have as much DPS as the Tornado, although the barrage implant doesn't really count because it doesn't last long enough, while the Hyporacle has the sustained DPS. The Hyporacle basically lasts for a very long time, definitely a lot more sustained DPS than with the thermal circulation. The thermal only lasts from heat 70 to 98, and then you have to basically cool it down. Although for a short burst the thermal circulation can work really good, can be really good for PvP. 1.3 km per second is the speed with a large afterburner, by the way. Although the Raelians have the advantage in having the best range. Now, the tracking at long distances is not that important. However, you have to make sure that nothing gets close to you, because if something gets close to you, it might be a problem to hit them, and that's one of the main drawbacks for Raelians. But they have very good range, and the Raelians have basically the best DPS in the game if we compare the blasters with the pulse lasers. For example, the blasters have much higher DPS. The Megaton Striker, for example, can have about 15,000 DPS, while the Apocalypse Striker is about 12 to 13,000. with pulse ladders, of course, because the pulse crystal, not the pulse crystal, the focus crystal has been nerfed recently. But I see some really nice damage output, and this ship is definitely a very good choice for missions. Now, the thing with assault battlecruisers in low sec is the fact that they can orbit very quickly around the target, and you can place them in such a way that it is very hard to catch them. Now, I hunt a lot, and I have destroyed a lot of battlecruisers throughout my career as a pirate in this game. And the one ship that's very difficult to catch is a assault battlecruiser with a large propulsion module orbiting at such a way that there is no warping, and basically you can't really approach them without being spotted if you are cloaked, because they will be moving 3 kilometers per second on average. You are going to be moving 240 meters per second. And with 240 meters per second, you are not going to catch a ship that's moving 3 kilometers per second with a very interesting manual orbit. So I really recommend everyone to practice manual flying a lot, because manual flying is a lot better than the auto orbit, although the auto orbit is really good for a lot of reasons, but manual piloting will save your ship, and it makes you a much more difficult target. I'm talking about that because in low sec, manual piloting and high velocity is going to be very important, especially if your region or constellation or system is populated by pirates. Pirates have a lot of different tricks that they can use to catch your ship, ranging from log-off traps to cloaky interceptors, Statios ships, from interceptor tackles, daredevil tackles, from double warp tricks. There is 1,000 tricks that we use to catch ships in low sec that are running missions. However, a ship that's moving and a very quick ship still represents a major issue to properly tackle, because one mistake and they can escape, they can easily warp out. Nothing stops them from warping out if they see you, if they pay attention to the game, and if they see something suspicious, they will warp out. And catching them can be extremely difficult, especially if we also consider the fact that the assault battlecruisers have the highest level of stab than any other ship type in the game, because most of the snipers have a lot of stabs nowadays, which I can see why they're doing it, because if something gets close to you, you can't really hit it, so the only way to survive is to basically have an option to warp out, and stabs basically gives you a easy warp out access. So that's one of the reasons why players use a lot of stabs on the assault battlecruisers. Although if you sacrifice stabs for a lot, for let's say extra speed, for extra lock speed or other things, then you don't really need stabs to escape, because then you gain some other advantages over the pirate, or basically over any ship that's on the field. And sometimes extra speed or maneuverability is a lot more valuable than stabs. Now, mostly because we have options to counter a lot of stabs, but if we can't catch the ship, well, then we can't really add any points on them, and that's how skilled pilots avoid us in low sec. They basically stay very far away, they orbit very quickly, and there's basically no chance to get to them in time. Now here I had issues with tracking. That little elite frigate was a little bit difficult to hit, so I went to the station, and this is the second PvE build that you can easily use. Now
Warp
this
drive
is a
active.
25 million ISK mission, so a bit more, a bit more serious. It's valued as a tier 6 storyline, so the enemy ships are going to be a bit more hard to kill. There is a lot of elite ships, so extra tracking is going to be very important. And depending on the mission that you're doing, you have a lot of different PvE builds. Now most of them are sniper builds, and I recommend that you go with a sniper build. So if you encounter a ship that you have issues hitting, like I did have right here, I recommend that you carry around a bunch of tracking computers so that you can easily replace the build if necessary, so that you can clear the mission, and then you can easily dock again and change back the build into full DPS. Again, you can go with triple magnetic field stabilizers or triple tracking computers. Both are very nice. Now for high sec missions, you don't really need a lot of tracking because there is not a lot of elites to worry about, and most ships are going to be generally very slow. However, in low sec, for the special low sec missions, for the more difficult ones, sometimes extra tracking is a lot more important than raw DPS, just because there can be a bunch of very small ships that can be very difficult to catch, and that's why I recommend that you carry around a bunch of tracking computers just in case a ship like that pops in, just like it popped in my mission here. And there is also this elite Dominix. Now you have to be very careful around these elite ships because they can be ridiculously fast. So this is where the large afterburner can kick in. Even if they web you, you still will have a lot of speed, and eventually you will be able to slip out of their grasp. If they end up getting close to you, you have a very easy escape route with the afterburner, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But always make sure that nothing is close to you. Make sure that the elite ships are killed first, because the elite ships are the most dangerous ones. And for low sec, definitely a sniper build. For high sec, a brawler build or a sniper build, both work. For a brawler build, I would probably use a large Nosferatu and large booster, and everything else will be maximum DPS. I can get about 6,000 DPS, and that is honestly really good DPS for a Battlecruiser. Can get Battleship level clear times, and you also get a pretty decent speed tank. After all, this little boat is surprisingly not that slow. Now, when I first looked at the stats, I thought that this might be the slowest ship that the slowest assault Battlecruiser, but I was wrong. So far the slowest is the Oracle, and well, I say slowest. 2.8 kilometers per second is definitely not slow, but this ship goes 4 kilometers per second, and the Tornado goes 5.5. So in terms of assault Battlecruiser speed, the Oracle at the moment is the slowest. Although I have a feeling that the Talos might end up being the slowest. We will see. The Talos is a very interesting little ship. I've seen the Talos kill Vindicators before, the Talos 3 killing Vindicators before, and I've heard players telling me how the Talos 3 is actually out DPSing the Vindicator. If that's the case, that's very interesting, and it would make the Talos a fantastic lift boat, especially if we look at the price tag. Now, am I so far very happy with the Naga 3? Yes, I am. This little Battlecruiser is so far doing a fantastic job. Definitely feels a little bit different, and honestly, the difference in DPS doesn't really show that much. You will still clear missions very quickly. Honestly, I barely see any difference in the clear time between the Oracle, Tornado, and the Naga 3. All have about I would say about the same clear time. Perhaps the Oracle, because lasers are lasers, has the fastest clear time, but I don't see much of a difference. Although the alpha damage is definitely much more different, but the Railans have a very fast activation time, a very high rate of fire, so that's really not that noticeable and not much of a problem. You get about 10 to 15,000 alpha hits, which is fine. Should be, actually it is already more than enough for basically any type of content that you plan to do with this ship. And like that, the 25 million ISK mission has been completed. You know, all of these assault battlecruisers are very interesting little boats, and I'm actually very glad that I decided to go and try them out. Now, I have a lot of ideas to do with my ships. Basically, looking for more PvP ships, looking for ships that can technically replace some of my ships that I currently use, and I'm definitely looking forward to try out all of these builds in PvP, especially the high DPS ones, because I think I should be able to do some very silly stuff with the assault battlecruisers.
Docking request accepted.
Very soon, when I decide on which one to get first, of course. But with that being said, I really hope that you enjoyed. The Naga 3 is a fantastic battlecruiser. Honestly, a very, very fun to fly ship, and I also hope that I was able to help you to decide what type of build to use on this ship. And with that being said, as always, I love you all. Fly safe, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.